This is a video of the install of my RVBits Light Module V2, available on RVbits.com. Jan Hennecum is the mastermind engineer behind these innovative lights that are designed to give RV owners and builders a brighter option than factory kit supplied lights and a more accessible price point than other lighting kits available on the market. He is very accessible, accommodating, and easy to work with. The lights will work on many of the RV models with just slight variations for each one. Check out his website, www.rvbits.com, to learn more about these lights and other RV projects he has available. I am not a builder. Even though I do have some basic skill sets, I'm always hesitant to make modifications to my airplane myself, particularly if it involves drilling or cutting new holes. I made this video to mostly help other non-builders like myself feel comfortable in tackling this retrofit, showing that it is very doable by most anyone. My intention for this light kit was to retrofit it onto my already flying RV10 that I purchased a few years ago. I rarely fly my 10 at night, but the first time I did, I knew I needed something way better and brighter than the landing lights that were originally installed. The illumination field and intensity of my original setup was adequate, but less than I was comfortable with to make night flying a frequent activity, especially in and out of my home airport that has marginal runway lighting. I had looked at various options on the market as replacement lighting and found them to be more expensive and to require more work and downtime than I wanted or felt they were too complicated for me to install myself. These units from RVBits seemed to fit the bill for an easy retrofit where I wouldn't even need to remove my wingtips. A meeting with Jan at AirVenture in 2023 to see the lights in person and talk with him about them solidified my choice, and I bought a kit. The installation was a big learning curve for me, and the video follows my process from beginning to end. I did the left wing first and took it slow, making some mistakes and learning things in the process. The right side took less time and was far more correct and better way to install the lights, particularly in a 10. I attempted to overlay corrections in this video along the way as the original video segments were shot live during my process and captured my mistakes as I made them. The light kit includes instructions and all the parts needed for completing the light assembly. You'll need to supplement with a few pretty standard builder items depending on whether you're starting from a new install or a retrofit. The included instructions are a work in progress, being updated as needed as more installers give feedback. Most of the measurements for the cutouts are correct. However, if you have a 10 or a 14, you'll want to use the light module to measure for yourself as you make test fits. There is very little but adequate clearance for these lights on the outboard wingtip in these models, as you'll see in the video. I think you'll learn a few things about installing these lights, like what to do and what not to do, by watching the video and hopefully see that you can accomplish this as well. Plus, when you're done with this project, you'll be seeing a lot more on your next night flight with these high-power LED lights. Thanks for watching. Here we are at the airplane. I'm going to take this cover off. There's just two screws. There's one on the top. There's one underneath. I'm going to measure my distances to see how big my blanking plate needs to be. Well, we've got the lens cover off. Going to take measurements for the back side. Call that 6 inches. 4 5/8. Then on the other side, it's about 6 1/4, and 6 in the corner. Now we'll know how big to make the blanking plates. So you can see on my setup, I have this plate already made that holds my existing landing light. There's already nut plates installed in those 3 positions, here, here, and there. And you can see I've got a pretty good sized cutout in the wing already. If you can see up in there or not, that I'll have to put a blanking plate over. But with this, I've got a nice existing template to use for that side. The other side, it's already solid from the fiberglass. Most likely, once I remove this, make my cutout for the light, I might not have to use the blanking plate at all on this side. We'll just have to wait and see. You can see in here, these are my 2 wires for the landing light. Those are the 2 wires for the nav light. And then you've got the Molex connector, 3 wires for the strobe. You need to know how your aircraft is wired. The kit includes an excellent wiring diagram that covers multiple options for wiring depending on your setup. I do not have VPX, just basic separate switches for my nav lights, strobes, and landing lights. If you do use VPX or other complex setups, Jan at RV Bits is happy to work with you to sort out the correct wiring for your plane so the lights work like you need them to. I do have a GAD27 controller that enables a wig-wag function for my landing lights, so I did not need to utilize all of the available wires on the PSU landing light group. I only needed the power wire and the ground. It's important to note that the entire light assembly only requires one ground. My original setup had a ground for the nav light and one for the landing light. The landing light ground used a heavier gauge wire, so I used that one for the RV Bits module. If you have traditional strobes, I had wheel-ins, you'll be bypassing or removing your strobe power pack and will only need 2 of the 3 wires in your shielded strobe wire bundle. I used the red for power and the white for sync, clipping the black one back and out of the way. You'll notice on the wiring diagram for group 2 on the PSU, the strobe group, 3 wires, red, white, and yellow. The red and white should be combined and connected to your strobe power from the plane. The yellow wire is for syncing if you want that functionality. For my setup, I wanted the wing strobes to be synced, so I connected the yellow sync wire to my white strobe wire bundle. I'll talk more about how I bypass the strobe power pack later in the video. As you know, there are a variety of connectors you can use to make your wiring connections, butt splices, Molex connectors, etc. I found these on Amazon. They worked great and made it easy to connect and disconnect during my install process, and they'll be real easy to disconnect for any future maintenance access needs. One of the best things about an experimental aircraft is we can use innovative products. These are the type of connectors I used to make my butt splices. They're really easy to use. These two will link together. And then this was what I used as a bus type connector with a 3 in, 9 out. We really only need 2 in, 6 out for the strobes. I ran my power in from the switch here and then out to left wing, right wing, and tail. And then I used the yellow for the sync. And I just hooked up my left and right sync wires and put them under just one of these. I originally thought I was going to need all of these since there were 3 wires in the strobe shielded cable to start with. I thought I might need one for the ground, one for the sync, and one for the power, but just needed power and sync, and really just needed one of these for the sync. I decided to make it a little easier since I was a little nervous about doing this with the real material. I made some templates, drawing them from the wingtip itself on some cardboard, made some templates there, transferred them over to some thin, just Luan, scrap Luan. I'm going to use these to build the model version of the lights, and then I will know exactly how to handle the real installation without messing up more expensive material. My whole purpose in creating a wooden mock-up was 1, primarily to learn how the whole assembly went together, and 2, to understand how the measurements were going to work from the instructions. You might decide you would like to do that yourself, but it's not necessary to build the model. It was mostly for my own benefit, for the learning purposes. This is a photo from the instructions, and you can see by the blue circled area saying 30 millimeters. Don't go by that measurement exactly because of your install. That number may vary like it says here in the instructions. Mine ended up being 28 millimeters. I measured using the dimensions in the instructions on blanking plate A, and then made a rough cutout using a jigsaw and a Dremel. And I'm now going to work the light in to make sure it's going to fit nice and snug, just sanding a little bit at a time. Did a little trimming. Now you can see the light fits in just right, nice and snug, no gaps on the top or the bottom. So this is what your light pivot point should look like. That's the 3D printed bushing, and then this piece is going to be a little bit loose on the back that holds your light module on the PSU. Light is going to slide over in that slot right there. So when you have the light module on top of your mounting bracket, it's going to look like that. I've got my light mounted on my dummy panel now, and it's snug there on the bushing. And then your PSU is going to fit on the back side, slides underneath those things on top, and then you pull the 2 Allen screws out that are there, run them through, and then tighten the ones on top. I'm going to show you the sequence that I used. I made a cardboard template from the airplane. Then I used that to make another template out of Luan and got my measurements all down and practiced cutting out and shaping, making sure the measurements were correct. And then I transferred that over to a 0.5 mil carbon fiber sheet, and I made the cutout from there, just using carbon fiber techniques, cutting out and sanding and making it smooth. It's not perfect, but it's going to work great. For cutting those carbon fiber sheets as well as the fiberglass, I just used a regular cutting bit on my Dremel, and then for the finished work, just a little sanding drum. That's all you need. Just to be really careful, go slow. This is what the carbon fiber plates look like that I bought. I got 3 of these, and you can just tape a template right on the front like I did and just cut out around that. And I'd have used Dremel with a cutting bit and then the little sanding drum on the Dremel to shape things up. But they come wrapped in cellophane. You have to peel that off before you're ready to mount it. I was able to get all 4 cutouts from one 300 by 300 sheet. I ordered 3 of them just to make sure I had an extra in case I messed up. I ordered the 0.5 millimeter, but if I did it over again, I would use the full 1 millimeter. For blanking plate A, I would use the 0.5 millimeter for blanking plate B because you need the room for the light. I want to measure this distance for you to show you on an RV10 what that distance from the light to the bottom of the cover plate A is going to be. Mine's 28 millimeters. Yours may vary slightly, but that's going to give you the clearance that you need over there on the edge. Back out at the plane doing the test fit of my panels. I did this one, and you can see it's a very tight fit where I had the 3rd screw there for my landing light panel. I actually had to trim some of the fiberglass off back behind there so that this would fit and the opening would be big enough for the light. I used the existing holes. They were already there, match drilled them. And on the other side, I got this plate made, and just with lots of fiddling and sanding and measuring again, I got it down to where it fits just like I want it. And I'll now have good duplicates for the other side. I took the light assembly and set it in, and then I marked where it hits on my nav light side, so I'll see where I'm going to need to cut out before I fit the other panel. Well, I've got a bit of a dilemma now that I've made some cutouts. I was under the impression from the directions that I needed to make a cutout here from my cover plate, and this side was already cut out from my existing landing light. My issue is this part right here. When I put the light up on the frame, you can see I've got it marked there with a line. The edge of the light, which is supposed to be recessed in like that, there's not enough room to get it over there. And on my install, from the original, this was an original nut plate that held on the cover plate for the other old landing light. So I've got an option of cutting this out so that it fits recessed like it's supposed to, which means I've got to take this out and make my cutout just a little bit bigger so the entire assembly fits in, and it'll all just be hanging on my cover plate. The other option, I can take out this nut plate and then sneak a rib nut in here I'll have just enough room for a rib nut there. And I'll probably just have to remake this since I've already drilled the hole. So that's my dilemma on this side. Luckily, I'm working on one side at a time, and after this one, I'll learn some things for the right wing. Your install may differ. This is on an RV10, and you've got very little room out here for the landing light. I cut out the little post in the back and opened up the area here just to see, thinking that that was going to make the light fit. And as I put it up here, I realized it's still not going to fit because the light itself is mounted to the face of the cover plate, which still puts it out too far on the edge there. So I'm going to have to cut this, drill out the nut plate, cut this, and fit a nut plate in there, a rib nut in there. I made my cutout. The light recesses in there nicely now. There's plenty of room for it to move. So on this side, I'm just using some tape on my carbon fiber panel. I've got the light face taped up and marked. So when I remove this, because I've got the mounting plate back there in the back, I'll know where my mounting plate needs to get mounted here so that my light has the correct recess on the side. You can see on my install, I'm a little bit crooked, but that was the nature of the cutout I did on the wing. But just to show you how my measurements ended up, it's about 43 millimeters on the top there, and the bottom, it's right about 48 millimeters. Now I expect on my other side, where I'm not going to cut out, on the nav strobe light side, yeah, I should have a straight line there. On my 10 install, I'm looking at the measurement from the back of the bracket up to the beginning of the fiberglass. And that's 45 millimeters, as you can see there on the tape. The instructions show 50 millimeters. Mine ended up being 45, which gives me just a tiny bit of reveal on the edge that you'll see in the final pictures. All right, I got the mounting bracket drilled out, countersunk, and mounted to the back of my plate. Doing a test fit. It's over the pivot bush in the back, and I've got it on the adjustment screw there. You can see it fits in right perfect, right in there. I just discovered in fitting the light again that the 3D printed bush there on the bottom is a lot thicker than my 0.5 mil carbon fiber panel. So it's holding the light housing itself off of the plate too much, so that it's making me even tighter over there in my cutout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the 3D printed bushing and add a washer in there that's about the same thickness as my carbon fiber panel to make up the difference, and I'll get a nice flush fit with my light assembly to the carbon panel. Now when I do the other side, I'm not going to do the big cutout like I did here, so the 3D printed bushing should be the right thickness for my fiberglass. I've made my wire connections in the back, and I've got my plate mounted up, and I'm ready to put on the light and then my last outer plate. Well, I got it all set in there, and I got my panels attached, and I got the other panel attached. I've decided that the screw that I was going to put right there with the nut plate on the back side, I don't need it, because the plate adheres nicely to there, and when you put the cover on the outside like this, it's going to have plenty of protection. It's not going to go anywhere. But I've got the wires all hooked up in the back. The last cover plate is on, and I'm going to put the Lexan cover on the outside. So you can kind of see what the finished product looks like. On the edge, you can see it's just a little bit of a reveal there, not much. In a moment, I'll turn the lights on, and you'll be able to see. The strobe's not hooked up yet, so I'm just going to show you the nav light and the landing light. So there's the red nav light and a very bright landing light. Moved over to the right wing, already got everything removed. I've got my nut plates put in, already fitted my cover plate, got those holes matched drilled, the nut plates put in. I cut out this part here so it's nice and flat with this surface from mounting my light. Next, I'll be fitting the mounting bracket so I can get that mated up. When you're drilling out your plate on this side and making your cover plate, what I did, instead of mounting these two screws that go into the backing mounting bracket, instead of mounting them through the cover plate, through the fiberglass into the bracket, I did them straight into the fiberglass, because the fiberglass gave me more room to countersink these heads than my 1/2 millimeter thick cover plate. So that's what I chose to do on mine. Don't forget to measure where your adjustment screw hole goes. Make sure you measure that and get that hole in your cover plate. You may have to oversize drill the hole in your cover plate just to make sure you've got room to get the screw in there. You see here I've got my mounting bracket already mounted. It's in place and my light is all hooked up. The PSU is all wired in and my light is wired in as well. And I'm going to put on my cover plate on the B side here, and then my light will go right on top of that. All right, here's a video of the right side, all done and finished out. Carbon plates put on. Everything looking good. Now on this right side, I did not do the cutout around here like I did on the left side. I mounted it straight to the existing fiberglass that was already there. It had holes in it for the nav lights, but this carbon fiber panel is covering those holes up. So it made a nice solid surface, less cutting. The light is still really close to the edge here, but that's just where it's going to be on your 10. Just got to measure carefully and make sure it fits. I want to show you here on the outer edge with that 45 millimeter distance on the mounting bracket. You can see I've got just a little bit of reveal here on the light. If you go the full 50 millimeters that the instructions tell you to on the RV10, RV14, this will be completely recessed behind there. It's going to depend on how you want it to look. If you want to have a little bit of a reveal or have it set back all the way to there on the edge. Completely up to you. A lot of aesthetics here. You still get plenty of support from the bracket here. I think next time I would use a full 1 millimeter plate, cover plate of this carbon fiber. This is just 1/2 millimeter. You can see it's a little bit thin, and because I've got very little to work with here, that bit thicker piece would make it sturdy and it wouldn't stick out. To get rid of my Whelen power pack, my setup had a single power pack that fired all 3 strobes. It was located aft of my battery tray behind the baggage bulkhead at approximately arm station 206. The 3-wire shielded cables from all 3 lights came together back there at the box and made for convenient placement for a bus type connector to complete the circuits. I removed the power pack completely and the Molex connectors. I had a power and a ground wire coming from my switch on the forward panel back to the box. I clipped off the black ground wire and connected the power wire into my bus connector and tapped in the 3 red wires from each strobe to that. Remember, the lights are already grounded locally at the wingtip. No other ground is needed. Then I took the white wires, which I'm using for my sync, and connected them to the second input on the bus connector. After some trial and error, the best way to get the wing strobes to sync was to put both the left and right wing white wires together into the same slot on the bus connector and leave the tail strobe white sync wire disconnected. The result is my wings are synced and my tail strobe does its own thing. The PSU controllers are programmed for the left side to be the sync out and the right PSU to be the sync in. As part of my install, I did have to purchase an LED replacement for my tail light, which allowed me to completely eliminate my strobe power pack and to make my strobe wiring less complicated. I bought an Aerolights position strobe combo light that was a direct replacement for my Whelen one. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Happy flying and enjoy lots of light.